communities, and even I'd be interested to know, like in your travels too, like if you go to Sri Lanka and you have a mix of people from British and Australian, and are they coming out of really established communities, or are they doing what you're doing? Like, okay, I've got into this and now I want to go deeper. Or do you have people in Sri Lanka that are really steeped deep in lineages? I mean, what's that kind of like?
It's all different. It's all different. And I think that's what's kind of cool about it, is that one thing I do really like about being a traveling yoga teacher is that everyone comes and offers something different to the table. Where here, and there's different communities, usually everyone is in that same community. Well, here's a big toss-up of like different communities people are all in, from different countries, from different lineages, of different practices. And I think that is like super awesome to be able to learn and see other people's practices, because then it kind of makes you question your practice, or maybe take on a new tool that you learned from them, because it is so diverse in where people come from. And it feels a lot less competitive in that sense, where I feel like once you get into the side of yoga and business, it's just like anything. We're competitive in the United States. Like, you're comparing and, connecting dots. Like, what do they do? What do I do? What can we offer? Like, I think a lot, as yoga teachers in the world of business of yoga, you're still probably going to have those thoughts here in the United States. But I felt like there, it's a lot less thoughts, because it's like everyone has such a different offering. Why am I comparing? Because it's totally going to be different no matter what, Yeah. And I think that was a really cool experience too, to have like that layer, I felt like, of competitiveness was taken off a little bit, or comparing was taken off a little bit, because I don't know what someone's going to bring to the table. Someone from Brazil that has been trained in, some other lineage that I've never even heard of. Like, it's cool to take on and see this is what they're doing. This is their relationship with their practice. And and through that, it can make you stronger in your practice too, because you can find new things that work for you, or you can get clear on, no, that's not something I'm interested in. That's not something I'm attracted to. Mm-hmm. So
that's very cool.
That is a cool experience.
Yeah. I was listening to a teacher not too long ago, and she had spent a lot of time in India, around Calcutta, and she was noticing a trend there where a lot of schools over there were starting to bring Western teachers over.
Oh, really?
She thought like, this is very interesting. Like, and they were promoting teacher trainings and doing things like, like you described, but there was also an interest in bringing Western teachers over. Did you see some of that over there, or?
In India, yeah. I mean, in my training specifically, like we had the guru that we had, Vishva, and then we had the three other, we had an Australian, a Canadian, and a South African trainer that were on the team. But they helped more with like logistics of how to run a training also, which I would say that coming from the Western world as well, like we're used to westernized structure of education and of school. So it was nice to have Western hands helping, because I think that they probably knew a format that Westerners could learn better versus us just going to be taught by just people from India. Like all of the knowledge came from India, came from an Indian man, but it was helpful to have these other people on, because they were giving it to us in a way that we could best facilitate, best learn those teachings too.
Yeah, that's good.
Because it is very diverse, like they were a good stepping stone in how we can best learn. That's what I have to say about that.
Well, no, that's good. I was thinking about that earlier this week. I'm like, I wonder how that, like your perception of that. And I knew that you had taught in Sri Lanka a couple times. And so I thought, there must be a market for Western teachers to participate. And then even at the school level or ashram level, and that, which is interesting. You probably didn't see that 20 years ago,
Probably. Yeah.
And so it's interesting, like we were talking about how yoga is evolving here and how it's started and these different little nuances. It sounds like that's happening in India as well.
Yeah. Well, I felt like personally in my experience in India, I did not see that yoga was so rich into the people that I personally met, that I came in contact with. So I would say most of the Indian people I met did not practice yoga, or I think that they were very connected to whatever their spiritual practice was. I just didn't see a lot of yoga among people of that culture.
Now, when you say yoga, are you thinking like physical postures, or do you?
Yeah, I would think more
there...
like yoga asana, or I think just like the general population. Like I didn't see people out practicing yoga like I thought I would see.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it is a tradition that's dying there as well.
Yeah.
Like it is an ancient tradition for them. But you do see many like very highly spiritual babas or sadhus, gurus, but you see that, but then I haven't seen a lot of many practitioners as well.
Yeah.
So I think that also in the West, like yoga has really brought the popularity back to yoga.
Mm-hmm.
Like it has ramped up like
worldwide.
Yeah. This practice where I think I'm not sure that it was as popular of a practice 50 years ago, even in India.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, I've heard that from others as well that have spent some time over there, that it's definitely a shift is occurring, and it's global in its nature. So that's, and it's cool to like have you here on your way to do some more traveling, but to see how that, like I want to bring you back on the show, sometime in the future, and just to have, just it's interesting to see what's going on and hear about it and whenever I travel, I try to, get into yoga class and talk to the teacher, like just kind of get, and we're all so like connected and similar in our journeys and in our kind of thought process and observations. And I think that whole idea we're all connected really shows up in the yoga community. And I believe it's in the community at large. And something you talked about earlier about the sound and vibration and the effect that has on the nervous system and different organs in the body. Neuroscience is like really getting into what's going on with vibration.
Yeah.
Do you follow along with that or have thoughts on vibration and where it's going?
I haven't specifically looked on the vibration aspect of it, but I think it is really interesting is how all of these Eastern practices and things that people have done for so long, it's like now we're getting to the point to prove all of it in Western science, which I think is so interesting. Like, I think it does show validity to the practice and, validity to the practice, because it's also like if people spent time, like Patanjali, if he spent all this time out there, like figuring these things out to write for us, like they also spent time in such a less busy, without so many layers and responsibilities, where you could actually spend time deeper connecting, like being able to figure all of these practices out and write them down. And I just think that's interesting, like with vibration, with meditation, with physical movement of it, with prayer, with intention setting. Oh, now we have science to prove all of this stuff is real. All of these mystical things we found with yoga, now we can prove so much of them. But I think that goes to show how valid and how powerful this practice is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and that I like that you mentioned Patanjali, and just think of the time that he was existing, that the human emotions haven't changed.
Yeah.
There's people, I'm sure, coming to him stressed out, fear, uncertainty, anxiety, in
just whatever way that was for them at that time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so he recognized, like, this is not optimal for the human condition. Let's figure out how to resolve some of that. And I think the solutions, like you said, like the practices are universally known to work.
Yeah.
And now that because of our Western minds having science validated.
Yeah, we're like, yeah, it must be right.
It's a selling
if someone
point.
Proved it is a selling point for us, though.
Which is sad because like so much like in the health and wellness realm, so there's so much pseudoscience out there as well, you know, so that's why I in the yoga community here, a lot of people talk about, you know, like evidence-based, you know, studies and like peer-reviewed studies. So I think that's great for our profession as yoga teachers, but also for the overall health and wellness of the community, that it's not a pseudoscience thing, although there's some of that in the yoga community, especially around, well, not to get into all that, but there, you know, if you read deep enough into findings and studies and like who wrote this, who authored this paper, and you know what was the, you know, the cohort, the size of group that was being studied, and so I'm just really intrigued by these, you know, broad studies with thousands of people or tens of thousands of people in the mindfulness realm, or you know, just making these little shifts in diet and lifestyle that yield these amazing outcomes. And so like it gets me excited to be a part of that. It's exciting to see you being a part of that and bringing, like, you're like going off to some far corner of the world and trying to absorb, you know, and make it your own in the sense that how do I embody it, and then bringing it back to a little community in Indiana and say like, here, try this. This is what's going on. Can you feel it? And I believe your students get it. I mean, I've been in your class. I could feel the energy and the vibe, and that, you know, that's just such really incredible work to be doing. And at the time in your life where you're doing it, where you've got the time to, you know, where, you know, you're not tied down to like, oh, this is my career in some other industry, or I got this house I'm tied down to, you know, that kind of thing is cool. And the one question we talked maybe a little bit or emailing about, sort of not yoga East versus West, but you've talked a lot about what you've observed in the Eastern traditions and yoga in America and Midwest in particular. But what would you say is like the biggest similarity between the two? I mean, there's obviously a lot of differences, but similarities, where do you see that?
I think people, well, I think no matter what, you're going to feel better after yoga. That's definitely a similarity. Like, you're never going to feel worse. You're always going to feel better. But I just think there's something special no matter what culture you're in, as well as taking time to actually be on your mat and explore the body and explore the mind. And I think no matter what lineage or practice or culture you're doing that in, you know, there's few other times where we're actually taking time to sit with ourselves or move to ourselves or check in with ourselves. And I think yoga presents a great opportunity to be able to do that in any facet. And let's see, what else do I think are similarities? I'm sure there's like so many I have, but
that's all right.
I mean, I think people are seeking to be better also. And no matter what facet of being better, maybe that's being a better human, maybe that's having a better body, maybe that's just feeling better, but it's this goal of, you know, of stepping up to work on yourself in some way. Some way you're finding a little bit of light and you're stepping into it, no matter where your mat is that you're practicing on.
Exactly. That's cool. So as a adventure traveler, I know we were talking a little earlier, you have a pretty epic trip coming up. Do you want to kind of elaborate on what's going on with that?
So my mom and I are walking the Camino Santiago Trail in Spain. So my mom came to visit me in Sri Lanka, and that we've both had traveled very extensively throughout our lives, but that was a really good experience for us and for our relationship to be a team. Like, I took her on third class trains, staying in hostels. Like, I made sure she did it real. Like, we did not stay in any cushiony area. We